Hello everyone. I, Preeti Yadav, extend a very warm welcome to this webinar on the topic Mediation through the Lens of Consumer Protection Act 2019. It's indeed my pleasure and privilege to be the moderator for this session. Now let me give you a brief introduction about Mediate Guru. It's a social initiative led by students all across the globe. Our aim is to bridge the gap between the general public and litigation. And here we are with our awareness campaign showcasing mediation as the future. Now let me take this wonderful opportunity to introduce our speaker for the day, Dr. Anita Patel. Dr. Anita Patel is currently an Associate Professor of Law at Ramaiah College of Law. She's been awarded with 2 gold medals for securing first rank in Masters of Law in specialization of business and trade law. She has joint chair on consumer law and practice at NLSIU. She's an accredited mediator by completing 40 hours of training in negotiation and mediation at Indian Institute of Arbitration and Mediation. She has completed her PhD from NLSIU in 2018. Ma'am, a very warm welcome to you, and thank you for graciously accepting our invitation.
Thank you so
A small notice for the participants. Please drop down your questions in the chat box below. So without taking any further of your time, may I now request ma'am to carry the session forward and enlighten all of us on the issue. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Preeti, for the kind words. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you all. Thank you so much for your kind words, Preeti. I welcome all of you all for the webinar. And first of all, I would like to wish you all a happy Navratri. And today, the webinar is mainly going to be on the mediation through the lenses of Consumer Protection Act 2019, right? So mainly today, y'all will be going through, or we'll have an interactive session where mainly we are going to see a different dimension where how exactly mediation will be playing its role under Consumer Protection Act 2019, right? So I'm not that aware as to the audience. Maybe either y'all might be college students, or y'all might be academicians, or it might be lawyers, any other stakeholders, right? So this will surely be an add-on value for you all with regard to your existing knowledge on Consumer Protection Act, right? Before going to mediation, let us firstly understand. I think I'm not sure how many of you all are really have read about this Consumer Protection Act. So to tell you on a basic level, so Consumer Protection Act 1986, it's an old 33 years old legislation, that is Consumer Protection Act 1986, right? So now the next question comes as to, when we had already a 33 years old legislation, why exactly the new act came into force? So here, before going to this, we also need to mainly understand that the Consumer Protection Act 1986 is mainly an umbrella legislation which is mainly protecting any of the consumer rights. It might be relating to any of your goods, or it might be relating to any of your services. Now, goods, I mean to say, like, for example, if you might have ordered for any of your products from any of the e-commerce platforms, that amounts to goods. Services, it might be any services which may be rendered to you by the service provider. It might be the insurance, it might be restaurant, it might be any banking service, insurance service. All these services come under the ambit of Consumer Protection Act, right? So that is mainly the Consumer Protection Act 1986 mainly deals with the protecting the rights of the consumer with regard to any goods or the services. Another thing which is also very important for us to mainly know before we enter into this act is, when do you call a person as a consumer? So right now your answer might be like, okay, the person who mainly consumes any product, he might be called as a consumer. Then the major another question arises, can you be called as a consumer, right, in case you are using anybody else's product, and unfortunately if you tend to have any injury because of the defect in the product, then can you file a suit against the manufacturer? That's the question. So mainly you have to understand mainly 3 things to mainly understand when you are a consumer, right? So first thing is that it should be for a consideration. Now, what do you mean by consideration? I don't mean the literal term consideration. that is to consider or to consider any person. Consideration means in legal terminology, as per the Consumer Protection Act, is you have to have paid some amount of money to purchase that goods or to avail any services. Okay, that amount has to be paid. Second, in case if you're using any other person's product, like for example, let us say I have purchased a iron box at home. Okay, unfortunately, my family members, you know, if I have purchased an iron box, it will be in the name of the on the invoice will be in my name. I have purchased the product. In case, unfortunately, if my husband's get any, you know, due to a short circuit, in case if he suffers an injury, can he file a case against the manufacturer? So here we have to understand that even a beneficiary, even though the invoice might be in my name, but he being the beneficiary of the product, or he can use the product and he can also file a case in case if there is any defect in the product, and because of this, if there is any injury caused, he can also file a case against the manufacturer, right? That is second thing. Another thing is also we need to see that it should be taken through a consent is very, very important. Now that doesn't that will not, that is major ingredient because it will not applicable in case of theft, right? That is the major ingredients you can say when you call a person as a consumer to file a case. Another very important aspect is also, right, also as to whether in case if you have purchased any product free of cost or service free of cost, can you file a case against the manufacturer or the service provider? No. So if there is any free of cost service, or it might be any goods, that will not come under the consumer protection. Okay, another thing is that another very important ingredient we need to know is that in case if a consumer has purchased any good, right? For example, if I have purchased only for the reason of making a commercial value. Now, what do you mean by commercial value? If I want to resell it or if I want to make money out of that and it is mainly for commercial purpose, that will not come under the purview of consumer protection. So what will be coming under the purview of the consumer protection is nothing but it should be for your domestic use. Then only it comes under the ambit of consumer protection. So these are the just major basic things which we need to understand when we are called as a consumer. When we actually fit into the definition of consumer, then only we can file a, or you can say a locus standi will be there for as a consumer to file a case against any of the goods or service provider, right? So let us go to the slides. So this was just a basic idea for you to give mainly to understand. Coming, let's speak a little more on the international scenario. Now, what are the international scenarios or the international instruments which mainly govern these laws? So, when we talk about Consumer Protection Act, we also need to understand that at international level, you have UN guidelines on consumer protection 1985. So, these guidelines are not binding per se, but we are a signatory and we are going to mainly follow these guidelines which are mainly with regard to the welfare of the consumer protection. It might be protecting the economic interest of the consumers, it might be the good principles practices which has to be followed, like disclosure and transparency. Now the reason I have put these points is that once we go further with the new chapters which are mainly incorporated in the said act, you will be able to relate to that, right? And also we have United Nations principles on business and human rights, which mainly three major principles have been mainly enshrined. First, it might be the duty, it's mainly the state's duty to mainly protect human rights. Second, it's the corporate responsibility to mainly to protect the human rights. Third is another very important, that is mainly to access for speedy remedy for those victims who are victim for these business related abuses, right? So when we talk about mediation, the reason we need to understand is why is mediation brought? Why is the mediation brought under Consumer Protection Act? We also need to mainly emphasize that on. So talk, this was mainly regarding international scenario. Before going to the major mechanisms which are working under ADR, that is alternative dispute resolution, we also need to know that no doubt the international scenarios are there, no doubt our constitution, which we call as a grunt norm of our country has also have fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy, where it is the duty of the state to mainly ensure and protect the rights of the citizens, right? It is also for this welfare of the citizens, and also mainly to see that there is, the justice should be availed and justice should be given at a speedy remedy. In the Article 21, there we have seen so many other case laws regarding that. Now, coming back to ADR, when we talk about ADR, the first thing comes to us is the litigation. Now, why litigation? And because it's mainly the traditional form which the Indian traditional legal system mainly recognizes, right? But what are the major flaws when we go for litigation is that it destroys the relation between the parties, right? It is a mainstream dispute resolution process, because once we say if any dispute comes, whether it might be property, whether it might be real estate, whether it might be consumer, the first thing which you would mainly take a recourse is the litigation, right? But the major defaults, or you can say the cons, you can say, are mainly destroys the relation. It is mainly here the process will be either one wins or one loses, and mainly the process goes in a public domain, right? It is in public time, and it is mainly decided by the public law of the country. Now, what happens in litigations? Let us take an example now for Consumer Protection Act. When I say, you know, when I say that it is between a consumer and a manufacturer. For example, if let us take an example of, now the Flipkart is coming with so many big billion sale, and Amazon is coming with great Indian sale or some sort of sales just to fascinate their products, to push their products in the market, right? Now, when we say this, it's mainly in case if there is any problem between the the e-commerce platform and the consumer, they will usually go for the court. That is the first recourse. Now, the reputation of the company will always be a threshold once it goes to the litigation, right? It comes into the public domain. There's a lot of reputation, and the name of the company is a threshold when it is coming to litigation is concerned, right? That is the major flaw, and mainly the companies do apprehend that not to go for litigation. So either they settle it through mediation or any other means of dispute resolution, so that it doesn't come in the public domain. So before that, before going to the arbitration, I would mainly like to just to have an interactive, I just want to know, we'll have a poll here with regard to yeah so mainly so here, when there's a say that how does a mediator works. So here, when we talk about mediator, we can take about that. But coming to the next is arbitration. So when we talk about arbitration, also is one of the major method where a dispute can be resolved. There's an arbitrator. They are the two parties which mainly, go before the arbitrator, and there they resolve the issue. But again, if you say here also, the major cons you can say is that it mainly breaks the relationship, right? Here also a one person may win and another person may lose, but the process will be private. It doesn't go to public, but it is mainly private, and mainly it is the decided by the private and public. It mainly decides, under the Arbitration Act. Coming to another very, very important and mainly the our major concept of today's webinar is mediation, right? So mediation is, you have to understand as mediation is something where it's mainly the person who is a mediator. He's not a judge, he's not a counsel, he's not the person who is mainly giving you his suggestion, but the person is going to only facilitate. Now, what do you mean by facilitate? Is nothing but just allowing both the parties to come amicably to the table and discuss what exactly are their position. Now, what is position is their interest, the interest what they have, and mainly to resolve it in an amicable way. Now, the next question arises as to whether this process, is mainly, which is mandatory. No, this is mainly where two parties come voluntarily, right? This process is very private. The place of the and the time has been chosen by the private. The parties have the right to choose the place. The decision of it is totally left on the parties. And here also there is always a sense of consent that in case if it doesn't work out, the parties of the mediation can always go back, and they can mainly go back to their the other legal recourse. Now, when we talk about the process, so here you can see whenever a person wants to go and take the recourse of the court, he is always in a confusion whether to go for mediation, whether he want to go to court, he wants to take any other modes. But they have to understand that mediation is nothing but a psychological and substantive satisfaction he has, because he has his own set of discretion to choose and to mainly negotiate whatever he mainly wants from the entire the contract or the the dispute, whatever is there before the mediation, right? It is mainly an outcome which is centered for the future, right? But here what happens in litigation and arbitration, the procedural satisfaction, you have a procedural satisfaction that, okay, I went to the court, I made sure that the other person has lost and I have won. But the outcome is centered on the past, it is not on the future, because in case of arbitration and litigation, the relationship may be lost, right? The relationship may be lost. For example, let me take the previous example. When I say it is between the consumer and the platform, obviously the company, that is, it might be any e-commerce company, it may have it may have lost its loyal customers who have been a very regular use, who is a regular customer. He may lose the customer. That apprehension will always be there for a company in case of consumer disputes. But in cases of mediation, it is like a mutual settlement. He may earn the customer once again by coming through a mediation settlement. Now, you also might be knowing about the court and mediation, which is mainly a pre-litigation mediation law in 2018. You might be knowing about the CPC, which is under 89. It is mainly referred to any stage of litigation. But now coming to Consumer Protection Act, where the new Amendment Act of 2019 has been brought. Now, you have to also understand when we talk about Consumer Protection Act per se here, because that is mainly the new dimension which we are mainly looking for. So here, these mediations are mainly brought into so that as I said, the consumer issues are mainly very petty. It is not that criminal in nature, that it is mainly a cognizable offense. But here mediation will be either taken, because only in cases of amicable settlement, those cases will be referred to mediation. So mainly what happens in mediation, they'll identify the issues. See, either, for example, it might be a defective product in case of consumer protection, right? They clarify the priorities, whether the consumer wants a refund, exchange, or another compensation in case of any injury suffered due to the defect of the parties, right? So mainly they want to mainly identify the issues, clarify the priorities, and then explore the area of compromise, and then they settle the matter in consumer issues. Coming to the objectives, what exactly the objectives in mediation? Firstly, it will reduce the time taken to resolve disputes. Next, it may reduction in the cost of resolving the disputes, right? It will obviously, the economical factor also plays a vital role during the resolving of the disputes. Next, it may provide a more satisfactory outcome to the disputes, because you may have had a different opinion to have the agreement done voluntarily, right? Minimizing further disputes. Like, for example, in litigation, even if you file against the manufacturer or the service provider, there is no guarantee that it will get over there. It may go for an appeal. But here, it is mainly minimizing the further disputes, because you are mainly going into mediation, where it is mainly a voluntary process. Opening channels for communication. As I said, it is also another channel for mainly communicating, and it is mainly enhancing the relationship, wherein at the same time you're saving your time, money, energy, and your reputation, which is not going into the public domain. And also at the same time, it is empowering each other parties to mainly go with the process. So here we saw the polls also, where 16% said that how does a mediator works. 16% said that mainly he looks into the legal rights and wrongs of a dispute and make a decision. As at the same time, 83% rightly said that he helps parties to settle their disputes by a process of discussion and narrowing differences. Yes, so as majority of us do agree that mediator works, and he's not a person who's mainly deciding as a judge or a counsel or a legal advisor there, but he's mainly helping, or you can say facilitating, the entire process between the two parties to mainly narrow down their dispute or the conflict to come out with the results. And as we already know the mediation process, and you all might have already attended a lot of mediation webinars also, where mediation is nothing but it's mainly an where the two parties come, they have an introductory communication, right, with regard to their with regard to the brief of what exactly they are doing. Then they mainly come to the communication as to what exactly are their interest or the position, or what exactly is their concern. Coming to the next is the problem solving. Then this is a very important stage where they are mainly going to deal with what exactly one wants, right? And the last is the settlement through a where they sit and mainly come with the settlement agreement. Now, coming to whether if mediation is very effective, yes, as I said, it is mainly private and immediate. The rights are mainly clarified here, right? The interests are very protected, right? As it is in private, the interests are very protected. It mainly engages the bills and the trust among each other. As I said, a relation between the consumer and the service provider. And it is very inexpensive rather than going for the litigation. It is much more inexpensive if we go for the mediation, and much more satisfactory at a personal note also, right? Advantages, as I said, reputation, preserves relationship, right? And substantive resolutions are coming up, and saves huge litigation, and preserves time, money, and energy, and the resources also. Coming to the very important aspect. Now, we know the intricacies and the various facets of how mediation works. Now, coming to the Consumer Protection Act, also we need to understand that when we called about Consumer Protection Act, mainly three chapters have been mainly brought into this new act. That is, one is chapter 3, which is mainly Consumer Protection Authority, right? The Consumer Protection Authority, which is mainly a suo motu powers have been given to these regulatory bodies to take any action in case if they find any misleading advertisements. Now, when I say misleading advertisements, the first thing which may come to your mind is the Maggie issue which happened in 2015, right? So I think that was a case where majority of us were really very disturbed after getting to know that okay, Maggie has lead and it has MSG and all this. So when that case came in 2015, we did not have the 2019 in place yet, but it was still under amendment of 2015. Amendment was still going on, and it was under the parliament in the drafting stage also. So here the CCPA has mainly brought to mainly make sure that there's no any unfair trade practice. There is no any unfair trade practice. It means that in case if the person doesn't give a bill, right, in case of goods or services, that is coming under directly under the ambit of Consumer Protection Act 2009, which was not there in the earlier act of 1986. It might be endorsement. Now, when I say endorsement, you might be remembering the Maggie issue where Madhuri Dixit, Amitabh Bachchan, and Preeti Zinta were mainly held liable as a brand ambassador, where for the the advertisement which was made on the Maggie. So that was also another case for brand ambassadors being liable for the misleading advertisements. And looking into that case which happened in Maggie, that is Nestle versus Union of India, here this authority has been given suo motu power to mainly investigate any case which is mainly related to misleading advertisement. Now, what is suo motu power is nothing but the authorities need not wait for someone to complain. They themselves can take action against such offenses. So that is chapter 3. Chapter 5, which I'll be dealing in detail in the mediation cell, where each district and each state commission will also be affiliated for a mediation cell, right? Now, the next question arises whether these mediation cells will be there everywhere. As of now, they have to yet, it has come into force on 24th of July 2019, but each district forum will be affiliated with this. And in case if any consumer case, if they feel that it is amicable and there is a chance that the case can be settled through mediation, that will be referred to these mediation cells. Getting my point? So mainly the point here is that, as I said, consumer courts also consumer forums have cases which are mainly 99.9% are mainly can be done through mediation, right? The last 1% may be somewhere where a lot of either it might be medical negligence, either a criminal case, or due to which there is an injury, or sometimes even a death in case of any due to the product there's a death. In such cases, that will not be referred to mediation cell. They cannot refer such cases to mediation cell, but only in cases of where the president and the two members who are there in the district forum and the state commission, if they think so that such cases can be referred to mediation cells, so those cases will be referred to the respective mediation cells. Coming to the last is chapter 6 is another very important chapter which is incorporated in the new Act 2019 is the product and service providers liability. Now, what is this product and service provider liability? You all might be thinking. So here what happens is, like, for example, let me give you an example here for your better understanding. So when I say I have ordered for an iPhone, okay, I have ordered an iPhone from all these brand the top e-commerce companies, but when I mainly I have ordered, but instead of an iPhone I get a brick, or you can say stone, which happened a few years back in India. So what happens is that when a person, if for say if I'm a lay person, if I don't know the procedure how to go to approach the consumer forum, I don't know where exactly to mainly get the redress. So what happens is, if I am asking the platformer that, see, I have purchased an iPhone, but instead of an iPhone I have been mainly given a stone, and the product is mainly tampered, or you can say the parcel mainly tampered. So the e-commerce platform says that, see, we are only the person who are mainly giving you the space where you can mainly choose your product at a click of a button. We are just a platform, the service provider platform. We are not the person who are mainly selling you the goods. Now, next, if I go to the next person, that is mainly the seller, right? The seller, then the seller says, I have been mainly giving you the product as it is. I have made sure that the product as you have ordered, I have sent you the same. You just ask with the, you can just inquire with the logistic if it has any mishap has happened on the end. So when I go to the logistic, who are mainly the courier person, he might have tampered it, but the burden of the shifts keeps shifting from each other. So I, as a layman, I don't have any recourse to what exactly is my remedy in case if I have ordered an iPhone, which is brand new iPhone, which is a very expensive one, and now because of the product has been tampered, I am, they are making me run from pillar to post because I don't know where exactly is my say here. So here in such cases, what exactly happens is that the same thing is mainly brought into chapter 6, where every product and even the service providers will be held liable, whether it is starting from the manufacturer, the seller, the dealer, the wholesaler. Everyone will be in the chain of reactions to mainly be held liable. Getting my point? So the small example says that in case if I'm a common layman, if there is any sort of liability, like for example, let us take the few years back we had Volkswagen, where it was taken back. The vehicle was taken back because of the defective in the inbuilt defect in the vehicle, right? So why were these products taken back? Why was these products taken back from the market? It was mainly because it had intent defects in that, right? To mainly see that, and who will be held liable in case anything goes wrong, whom the consumer has to be held liable in case of any default. So this chapter in product and service provider liability is nothing but no matter if it is a good or no matter if it is a service, the person or whoever is in the chain of the manufacturer till the last consumer, whoever is there in the chain, they all will be held responsible for if there is any defect or if there is any deficiency in the service. Now, before going to 2019, I also want to know mainly the comparison between the two. So in the definition, as I said, it should be something which is paid, right? It should be mainly not free of cost. It should be for commercial, it should be not for commercial use, right? And it should be mainly consent has to be given in case when we call it as a beneficiary of the product. At the same time, if you see the 2019, you can also see that here they have not only engaged offline, but also they have included expressly the word online, whoever has been involved in any transaction through electronic means. It might be direct selling, it might be teleshopping, or it might be the multi-level marketing. So here, if you see the ambit of the 2019, it is much more broadened, much more comprehensive, and much more widened to make sure that there's no person going scot-free in case of any malpractice or in case of any unfair trade practice happening to the consumer. The scope also here says that in case of any goods and services for consideration, in case of 1986, the free and personal service are excluded. And here, as I said, the online thing has been expressly mentioned. Now, the next question may arise is to whether the earlier one, that is 1986, whether that time the cases were not being taken in case of any online transaction. They were taken, but the definition, you can say, that was not comprehensive in nature, because of which many cases would mainly fall short, because the definition was very vague and it was not covered comprehensively. But now in this new act, the definitions have been covering very, very with each and every sort of online transactions happening. Here in 1986, when we talk about the unfair trade practice, there were only 6 types of practices which were mainly called to be unfair trade practices. It might be false representation, misleading advertisements, etc. But here they have added few more clauses, which is very, very important for us right now, because they have asked, in case if the person has failed to give a bill or receipt or an invoice, that will also be amounting to unfair trade practice under the 2019 Act. Right? In case the second, another important aspect they have included in the new act is that the refusal to accept a good returned within 30 days. Now, when does this apply? For example, if you have purchased a product online, and in case if the service provider refuses, that he doesn't take it within the cooling period. Now, cooling period is nothing but the 30 days return thing. If he refuses, that will also amounting to unfair trade practice. And the last, in case of a disclosure of personal information, confidence, unless required by the law. And mainly, for example, this is another very example, like whenever you go for a mall, they usually take your number, right? And even if they might have told that they'll not be sharing your information, it is mainly infringing your privacy, where your personal information is being passing on to others for their own commercial use. Coming to the next is product liability. As I said, the new chapter in chapter 6 of Consumer Protection Act is mainly dealing with the liability which can be made against the manufacturer, service provider, and the seller, and also the compensation can be obtained with regard to this. But initially, like in the old Parent Act of 1986, there was no any provision related to this. The act was totally silent on product liability. There was only one provision, that is section 21 R, which was mainly dealing with unfair trade practice, and that's it. Other than that, there was no any comprehensive provision per se on product liability. Another is unfair contracts. It was not there earlier, but now in 2019 they have included under the unfair contracts. Coming to the next is CCPA. As I said, these are the advisory board which are mainly at the district level, state level, and the national level. The councils are there, the regulatory authorities are there. And if you see the CCPA, they have given a higher amount of penalty provisions when you compare it with the old act. Initially, there was no any regulatory authority per se in 1986, but in the new act, they have been mainly making sure that they have stricter penalties, and they also issue notices, pass orders to mainly recall the products. Like, for example, Maggie is the best example which I can give you, right? And they can prevent unfair trade practice, reimburse the purchase price paid which is there, and the penalty here in 2019 are much more stricter, which goes to 20 lakhs with imprisonment. But initially, if you see the old act, there was no any much stricter penalties, which was mainly lead to the more amount of defaults happening, because the penalty provisions were not much stricter. Another very important aspect of 2019 which you have to know about this is, in earlier, the pecuniary value was only up to 20 lakh under district forum, right? In state commission, it was only from 20 lakh to 1 crore, and national commission, it was above 1 crore. Now, if you see the new act, it has been totally drastically increased. And if a person wants to file a case, which is mainly the pecuniary value is 1 crore in case of district forum. That means majority of the cases will go to the district forum, right? And the state commission has a pecuniary value from 1 crore to 10 crore. And if the pecuniary value is more than above than the 10 crore, then it will directly go to the National Commission, that is NCDRC at New Delhi. through a selection committee, again with the approval of the central government and through a notification. So these are the some mistakes of 2019. CPA is there and the commission there, and if any person doesn't the orders of these committee forum, if they don't comply with the orders, they can face an imprisonment up to 3 years, not less than. Yeah. Moving forward, I think we were mainly left where when I said that National Commission has mainly given, been given the powers where in case of any dispute redressal mechanism, there were not initially any provisions per se with regard to any dispute concern is there. There was no any proper provision with regard to dispute redressal. There was only one mechanism, that is mainly to going through the district forums and the state commission and the national commission. But now in 2019, the mediation cells have been mainly brought under chapter 5 of this act, where it is mainly having been attached, each district forums has been given a mediation cell. The state commissions have been given a mediation cell, and the national commission also has a mediation cell, right? And also, as I said, the penalty provisions are much more stricter, much more stringent, because here, as I said, they face an imprisonment where up to 3 years and a fine not less than 25,000, which may also extend to 1 lakh rupees. But at the same time, initially in the 1986, they were not very, meager amount of imprisonment, that is hardly 1 month, with which may extend to 3 years, again depending upon the offense committed, and the fine may be up to 2,000 to 10,000 rupees only. Now, coming to the last, that is mainly e-commerce. Now, when we say e-commerce, I think after demonetization, the amount of e-commerce transaction has increased to to the larger extent. Now, when we say e-commerce, initially there was no any provision with regard to e-commerce in the old act. But now in 2019, they have been mainly putting direct selling, right? Direct selling, you might be knowing about the direct selling or the pyramid schemes, which happens where there's no any, the person who is mainly the seller is there. It is directly between the company and between the last, for the consumer, it is mainly coming through a channel of, pyramid schemes, which are mainly the agents come through the products. So here it mainly defines direct selling, e-commerce, electronic service providers. And here the central government have made also the rules mainly to prevent any sort of unfair trade practice with regard to e-commerce as well as the direct selling is concerned, right? That is another very important aspect when we say that these provisions are there. Now, when we compare the remedies and the relief which is mainly there in CPA, when you compare it with any civil suit and criminal nature, is because when we talk about the remedies, here the remedies may be either to refund, right, return, compensate in case of any injuries suffered, right? It may be mainly either refund, exchange, or compensation. But in civil suit, what happens, it is mainly either a person win or lose, or it might be either a compensation or a dismissal may be there. Criminal nature, again, it depends on the case to case basis. If it is criminal in nature, again, it doesn't come under the ambit of Consumer Protection Act at all. Now, coming to the very, very important aspect of our today's discussion is mediation cell, when I say under chapter 5. Now, in coming to the way we mainly progressed, we mainly saw about the international perspective, we saw the constitution, we mainly saw why exactly the act came, that is Consumer Protection Act 1986, and why exactly the 2019 also was mainly brought into this, wherein mediation cell were being mainly given a separate chapter, right? We have mainly gone through the reason and the historical aspect as to what it was earlier and now how the mediation has brought into. Now, the major reason for mediation being mainly incorporated is because of the delays which were happening in consumer cases. Now, when I say that, consumer cases are almost where it might be a petty case, where it might be either a refund or exchange, or a small damage it might have happened, a very petty case where it can be, there's a lot of 100% chances that it can be done through a proper mediation process. So that was the major reason where mediation was mainly brought. It is the first legislation which is where mediation has given a legal sanctity. If you see any other law, it, no doubt it might be under section 89, it might be section in the Commercial Courts Act, but this act, that is Consumer Protection Act 2019, where a separate chapter mediation cell has been given under chapter 5, wherein there are few sections which mainly deal with how exactly the mediation cells has to be established under section 74, right? Establishment, as I said, each district or each district, state, and the national level, they will be having a mediation cell. And in case if the president, who is mainly in the district forum, state commission, and the national commission, if the president and the members of the forum, if they feel so that in case there is a chance where any case can be mainly brought into the aspect of mediation, where this can be a settlement, that can be mainly referred to the mediation cell, irrespective whether it is a district forum, state commission, or a national commission, right? That is mainly dealing with section 74. Coming to the next is 75, which is mainly empanelment of the mediators. Now, empanelment of mediators are mainly either, as you know, the basically the empaneled mediators are somewhere as per the Supreme Court manual. They might have been a mediator who have undergone a 40 hours training on the mediation, right? And it might be any high court judges, Supreme Court judges, district judges who are mainly into the into the judiciary for at least minimum 10 to 15 years. They can be also empaneled as a mediator. And also for not only the High Court and the Supreme Court, but there are also some private mediators like IAM, CAMP, AMC. There are many other private organizations who also have accredited mediators who can also be empaneled for these mediation cells in case if they want to mainly mediate any of the cases which are mainly coming before this district forum, state commission, and the national commission. 76, section 76 mainly also says about commission to choose mediator depending upon the nature of the dispute. So here section 76 also makes it very clear that the commission can be is the mainly the having the power to mainly choose a mediator depending upon the nature of the dispute. Now, something like, for example, if it is a case of insurance, and a person who is mainly an insurance expert, or a person from banking expert, if a banking case has come, the such kind of a mediators who are mainly an expert in that area, and they can be called depending upon the nature of the dispute. They can be chosen by the commission, that is the president and the members of the commission. They can choose the mediator, and they may be called as a mediator to to take up the cases under the said district forums or state commission or the national commission. 78 also says about power of the commission to replace mediator upon complaint. Now, when does it happen? So section 78, as I said, it also gives a power to the said district, state, or national commission. They have been given a power to mainly replace the mediator. So when does the point comes as to when can be the mediator be mainly replaced? In case if there is any bias, or in case if the mediator knows, in case the parties personally. So in case of any conflict, or in case of any of the personal interest which is mainly shown, and in case the parties have complained to the forum that they want to mainly replace the mediator, that can also be done under section 78 of the act. And section 80, which is also a written agreement in respect of all or some of the disputes, to be signed by parties and their representatives. So here it is very, very crucial, guys, when we say about the written agreement, because as I said, this is where it is going to mainly take forward. That is mainly the sanctity of the mediation mainly comes where it comes through a mediation settlement which happens here, and an agreement which has been signed by the parties. So every time, whether it is a general mediation or whether it is Consumer Protection Act, mediation has to be mainly, agreement has to be signed by that person who has an authority, or through his representatives. That, for example, let us take the first example which I gave in case of a consumer and a company. In case of any of the defective good is concerned, the person who is mainly having the power to mainly sign the agreement, he has to come and sign. Like, for example, if the person who is maybe the director or the CEO, and if he has the power to mainly enforce it, only he has to come. The person who doesn't has a power to mainly agree for the terms, and then he signs, and later he may take a stand that I don't have a power to mainly agree for the terms because I am not a CEO or a founder, right? For that sake, here it's it is not only for this, but also any mediation processes which goes, it's very important the person who comes there on the table for any sort of settlement, he has to be having that authority to sign, so that whatever the terms have been agreed, that has to be mainly binding, right? So here also in under section 80, it is mainly the written agreement, which is mainly like a settlement agreement, which happens, and that has to be signed by the parties, or it might be its representative. So the next question arises whether only the parties can be there for the mediation. No, the parties can also be accompanied by their advocates also to mainly represent their case. There is no any hindrance that only the parties have to be there in the mediation. It can be also accompanied by their lawyers for the mediation processes. If no settlement arises, mediators can report to the commission and the case would progress. So the next question arises as to what, okay, if everything goes fine, they can come up with a settlement. Either it might be refund, exchange, or whatever it might be between a consumer and the manufacturer. But in case if there is no settlement, then the mediator who is appointed, he has to report to the said district forum, state commission, or national commission, wherever the case might be. He has to report it back to the commission, and then again it will go back to the same Consumer Protection Act. All the at the similar provisions will be applicable, and the mediation will be closed. The mediation will be failed, and it will go as further as the Consumer Protection Act. That is regarding the chapter 5, wherein section 74, 75 till 80 are very, very important when we say mediation cells under Consumer Protection Act. So when I say the principles of mediation process, as I said, it is part of the other party, right? It is parties dimensions where parties dimensions which are mainly looked into, because they are coming with the offers, they are coming with the options as to how they are going to resolve. It is not the mediator who is going to give the dimension, who is not coming with the suggestions. It is mainly the dimensions or the approaches which the parties have. Next is finality and certainty. Here, when the parties come voluntary, a lot of finality of the dispute is certain. It is very certain here. There is no any ambiguous that it will further go for an appeal. It will be finalized. It will be coming to a decision at the end of the mediation. But mainly it identifies the conflicts and the disputes. What exactly are the conflicts and disputes? It is only when they come to the table that they know that, okay, the consumer is only looking for a refund or an exchange, and the company will also be knowing as to how they can deal with that instead of going to the litigation, right? And also it mainly separates the interest and the position from the parties, right? What is the interest and what is their position, that is mainly separated in mediation. And there is no any blame game on each other like how it happens in litigation or in the arbitration, right? It is mainly facilitating in an amicable way through the mediation. As I said, it is a voluntary process. And the another best part of mediation is that even if a person tends to feel that at a later stage that he can quit the process, if he doesn't agree to any of the terms of the other party, he can quit so, and again take back the legal recourse which he had applied earlier, that is in under Consumer Protection Act. If he wants to go under Consumer Protection Act under the deficiency of service or defective good, he can do so in case if the mediation fails, right? So he mainly a chance is given to the parties to mainly make sure that if there is any amount of chance to settle, they can settle. Otherwise, again, they can go back to the major acts provisions which is there in Consumer Protection Act of 2019. Now, when I say mediation cell, we also have to see the selection of these committees of the mediators are through a selection committee. As I said, the commissions have a president and the members, and these people are the one who are going to mainly empanel these mediators, right? And they are also supported with the staff, with mainly the president, with the consultation of the central government. They will be constituted under the mediation cells under the rules of 2020. Now, very, very another important which we also need to know is, we understood the concept, we understood the process, we understood what sort of cases may come. Like, for example, it might be defective goods or deficiency in service. But we also need to know under the Rule 4 of the mediation, Consumer Protection mediation rules of 2020, that what are the matters will not be referred to mediation, right? These are the offenses in case the mediation will not be offered, because as I said earlier, they are not they cannot be settled through mediation, because they might be either criminal in nature, they might be either cognizable offenses which cannot be which doesn't fit into the nature of mediation. So under Rule 4 of the Consumer Protection mediation rules, they have mainly put as to the medical negligence which are mainly resulting in grievous injury, right? If a person has had a death because of the medical negligence happened in a hospital, or due to which there might be death, they are not referred to mediation under Consumer Protection Act. defaults or offenses of which application for compounding of offenses have been made by one or the other party. So again, in case of any compounding offense of criminal in nature, which might be done by one or two more parties, then they are also not in nature of mediation. So they are also not referred under the CP Act. In case of any fraud, fabrication, forgery, any documentary forgery has happened, they are also not amounting to mediation under Rule 4 of the rules of 2020. Cases relating to prosecution for criminal and non-compoundable offenses, anything which is relating to public interest or wherein numerous persons' interest have been then those are, if they are, those such cases also will not be referred to mediation. And if it appears, and apart from these, if it appears to the commission that there is no any chance or there is no any element of settlement exists between the parties, and that discretion can also be taken by the commission to not refer that case to mediation under the mediation cell, which is mainly incorporated in chapter 5 of the act. Yeah, now the another thing also comes to here is what about the refund. So here also the rule and the law regulation both say that in case if a commission refers the parties to mediation, right, if the commission mainly refers any case which is to the mediation, and the complainant shall be entitled to receive full amount of the application fee in respect of such complaint if the settlement is reached between the parties. So here it is like a win-win situation for the consumer and the aggrieved party, or the even the company per se, because in case if they come to an mediation, and if the mediation is successful, then even the amount which they have paid as an application for the mediation, that will be refunded for them back. Resort to arbitral or the judicial proceedings. Excuse me. So here also there is another rule, another clause saying that during the process of mediation, the parties cannot initiate any arbitral or any other judicial proceedings in any of the same respect of the matter. Like for example, for the same cause, they cannot initiate any other proceedings during the process of mediation. That means that they cannot take any legal course between when the mediation proceedings is going on. Yeah, that is another very important clause when we talk about mediation is concerned. So as I said, the regulations has been also mainly issued by NCDRC in July 24th, and mainly here also the parties have to mainly the mediator has to mainly explain the terms of the agreement to the parties before obtaining their signature. So whether it is vernacular language, whether it is in any other language, that has to be mainly explained by the mediators, right? And also the code of conduct also has been given under this regulation 2020, wherein the parties, the mediator has to mainly only see to that he has to facilitate and not give his own opinion, which many times it happens. So right, so here in the code of conduct also they have been given under the regulations under the 2020, where how exactly the mediation process has to be taken forth, what is the procedure for the empanelment, and also with regard to the eligibility for the empanelment of mediators have been also very, very comprehensively given under the rules, regulations for the consumer protection mediators under 2020, right? That is with regard to this. So let me lastly conclude that when we know about the entire the scenario, whether it is international, the coming to the national, we saw into Consumer Protection Act 1986 what was the flaws and why the 2019 Act came into, and under 2019 which are the three most prominent chapters which has been incorporated, and that within that where the mediation cells have been mainly incorporated, and what are the powers, functions, how it is going to be processed, how are they going to be empaneled, which are the cases which cannot be referred. Looking into all this, as we know, it is very very evident that the new act is mainly has been broadening, comprehensively covering the consumer protection regime in India. But at the same time, it also has to have a lot of implementation aspect. As we already know that India has an n number of laws, but the only problem arises in India is its implementation. So here, as I said, no doubt the major highlights of 2019 was the three chapters. It might be sellers, manufacturers liability, and the endorsers. At the same time, the dispute redressal mechanism has been given a legal sanctity under the act, and also at the same time, there is a stricter penalty provisions which will mainly I'm not telling drastically reduce, but at least gradually a lot of unfair practice can be curbed in regard to consumer protection in India. So the lastly, I would only like to say that the most vital aspect is, no doubt we all have these provisions right now in place, but let's see how best the provisions will be implemented in going further years. Okay, with this, I would like to end my lecture. Thank you so much for your patience hearing. Any questions?
Yes, ma'am. Now we'll take some questions from our lovely audience, but due to the time constraint, we'll take only less questions. So the first question is, does Red Bull comes under misleading advertisements?
Can you just repeat?
Yes, ma'am. Does Red Bull comes under the misleading advertisement?
Red Bull.
Red Bull Act.
Okay. So they are mainly saying the Red Bull. Okay, the drink which comes, right? So here, see, for example, let me give you an example. When we talk about misleading advertisement, it itself is a big, or you can say a big topic per se, because when we talk about Red Bull, it is mainly a drink. I'm suppose I have not consumed, so I am not so aware as to what exactly the tall claims which they make. But here, mainly when we talk about the layman, when they try to see any advertisements. So here also, initially, I would like to mainly take it for a legal aspect first. So initially in 1986, there was no any provision per se as to what is misleading. So let me give you an example. So what may be misleading for me, it may not be misleading for you, right? If I'm a layman, I don't know what exactly the product is. I don't know what they're trying to claim. For example, let us say any product which we all can relate. So for example, let us take Horlicks, or let us take Complan. Say in Complan they say that a child who consumes this energy drink or the health drink, he or she may increase by 3 inches. In Horlicks, they say that it is sharper, stronger, or taller. All these tall claims which they make, they have to substantiate that. So in Red Bull, I don't know what are their tall claims, but if they can't do so, then that will surely amount to misleading advertisements. So in this Red Bull, I think it is an energy drink, right, Priti? Yeah, if they cannot claim, if the company cannot claim that it is mainly what they are trying to claim in their tall claims, if they cannot prove that through a substantive evidence, then it will amount to misleading advertisements. That would be my say for this.
Okay, ma'am. And the next question is Cooperative Society Act 2012 is covered under Consumer Protection Act 2019?
Cooperative Society
Act 2002.
Okay, I'm just seeing the chats. Okay, so here when we say cooperative society, they don't come under the consumer per se. Like for example, if they want to have a for example, if there is an association, like for example, if they are NGO, they can file a case. They have a locus standi to file a case in case of any grievance of consumer protection. So that they come under the ambit of consumer protection. If they have an organization, any association, whether government or non-governmental organization, if they want to have if they have a similar consumer grievance, they can file a case against under Consumer Protection Act.
Okay.
So here I would just like just a minute. I would just like to add a few more things, because when I was telling you the basics things, I can add one more add on to that is a person. As I said, a consumer, basically an individual can file a case. The government can also file a case. A association, in case, like for example, let us say if I'm staying in an apartment, okay, we are in an association. There's an apartment association, and if we feel that there is a deficiency in service with the builder's construction in the apartment, we as an association can also file a case against the builder. So when I say consumer protection, it may not only mean that an individual, but it can be also an association, a group of people whose similar interests have been violated under the Consumer Protection Act, and they can have a group, they can form a group, and they can file a case against the defaulter, or you can say the builder. In my example, I can say this is just an example which I gave for your easy understanding. Yes, Preeti. Preeti, over to you. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah.
Ma'am, the third
next
question.
Yeah.
What will be the impact of fixing 1 crore as pecuniary jurisdiction for district commission? What impact will it have towards mediation?
Okay, so yeah, firstly, I would like to mainly give an explanation for the pecuniary jurisdiction has been increased. See, the reason mainly because we were been involved in NLSIU for mainly drafting this when it came to an amendment in 15, then 18, and lastly in 2019 it came into force. So pecuniary jurisdiction was mainly increased because, as you see, there's number of cases like it. I can say in legal terminologies, it is like a docket exposure. Now, what is docket exposure? Is nothing but the burden of the courts with regard to the pendency of the cases, right? So any small thing happens, everything cases used to go for district forum, state commission, and the national commission. There was a huge docket exposure happening, and that is to mainly reduce the burden on the court as well as the reduce the way the cases are pending, the consumer cases are pending like the civil courts. So that was the major reason the pecuniary jurisdiction have been increased, so that majority of the cases now, as I said, up to 1 crore, they will all go to district forum, right? They will not directly go to the state commission or the national commission. They will directly come under the district forum at the district level. And there, the reason for making pecuniary value at the same time putting mediation cell also comes hand in hand, because there you're putting the cap of 1 crore to the district forum. At the same time, you're putting the mediation cell, which is affiliated to each district forum and each state commission, where any cases which are mainly of a nature that it can be amicably settled, whether it is a defect, deficiency, or return, or any of the small consumer cases. As I said, it might be builders illegal, the quality of the construction might be low. Any cases which come to the consumer forums, that can be resolved at the lowest level, that is the lowest commission, that is the district forum. At the same time, the burden on the higher courts will be reduced, and it will be sorted through mediation at the same time at the lower level, at the district level. So here, not only the courts are reduced burden, it is also very cost effective for the consumer, because he don't have to go to and fro for the national commission at New Delhi. It will be settled in his own place of residence, where with low cost, right, with low energy, and with low of minimum of any public, not going in any public domain in case of MNCs is concerned. So if you see the various dimensions, it might be as a consumer or it might be as a company, both are equally benefited at the same instance when such pecuniary jurisdictions have been brought into the district forums at the same time, mutually or amicably getting settled through mediation. So this is what I feel the reason mainly to come up with the pecuniary jurisdiction to be higher in cases of coming to the district level. At the same time, the way it has been mainly collateral to the mediation cells.
Yes. Now, my last question would be, in your personal view, do you think it would have been better that if pre-litigation mediation was made mandatory for consumer forum instead of consumer forum deciding to refer the matter? See, here, if you do that, my personal opinion is, because when we as a mediator, when we are undergoing the training, we ourselves have been told now and again that mediation is totally voluntary process. We cannot compel, neither the commission or the forums cannot compel the parties to mandatorily go for commission or mandatorily go for mediation process. Why? The mediation itself, the essence of the mediation itself is voluntary, right? So here, when you say it's voluntary, you cannot compel them. See, that is what they're saying. Even if their nature is there, and see, it is not only not only benefiting for the forum because they can dispose the cases at the earliest, but at the same time, some laymen, they will not be knowing that such a process is there also. See, for example, we all are legal, coming from a legal fraternity. We know that there is a mediation clause. We know that this provision is there where we can amicably settle with the MNCs in case of a consumer dispute is concerned. But as a layman, if you think, they may not be knowing unless and until the court or the forum gives them a direction. See, your cases has a chance that it can be settled, so you can go to the mediation process. But later, if you feel so, you cannot go for mediation settlement, and if anything, nothing goes right as per your needs and basis, you can come back to us. See, that is where they're just giving a direction to the consumers. But if you say, ultimately, if you give it as a
initial that it is mandatorily as a this, then I think the entire principles of mediation will fall. But as I said, many of these cases also have pre-mediation clauses also, that also works well. But when you talk about mediation, I feel voluntary process, the entire principles of voluntary process will be hindered if you make it mandatory that each and every cases have to be mainly going to that. The process, the principles of the mediation of will be questioned in case if it is made mandate. It should be voluntarily, and it should be left to the party's discretion to take it to the mediation or not. That is my personal opinion.
Yes, ma'am. That's all for the question. Thank you, ma'am, for such a vibrant, knowledgeable, and interactive session. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And before you leave, make sure you fill the feedback form to get your certificates, and do post your certificates on your social media handles with #MediateGuru. And thank you, everyone, for joining. It was a lovely session. And if you don't want to miss any updates from Mediate Guru, do follow us on all our social media handles and join our WhatsApp group. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon.